Tonight, inshallah ta'ala, I want to give you a full overview of how you can map out the next 10 nights, inshallah ta'ala, understand what they're all about, and have a game plan, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to allow us all to catch Laylatul Qadr. Allahumma ameen. And I want to start with a visual, because so much about the other side was coming to terms with how we can't see, but we can somewhat perceive what is happening around us. And when there's barakah, especially when there is a blessed presence around us, then we truly start to feel the blessings in our lives. And I want to start with something, subhanAllah, I was thinking about in that regard, as it relates to the interaction with the angels in particular. And of course, I love talking about the angels. It's always been a fascinating subject to me. So you can imagine Laylatul Qadr, I kind of geek out when I start reading about the malaika in Laylatul Qadr. But it's actually not related to Laylatul Qadr. It's another narration altogether, where the Prophet ﷺ was one day praying with some of his companions. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, Sami'a Allahu liman hamida, a man responded after coming up from the ruku', Rabbana walakal hamd, hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi. That to you, O Allah, belongs all praise, hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi. Praise that is plentiful, that is pure, and that is blessed. And the Prophet ﷺ, he turned around after the salah, he said, who said that? Who was the one who said that? And the man said, it was me, Ya Rasulullah. The Prophet ﷺ said, رَأَيْتُ بِضْعَةً وَثَلَاثِينَ مَلَكًا, that I saw 30-something angels, and they were competing over that praise of yours. And he said, أَيُّهُمْ يَكْتُبُهَا أَوَّلْ, which of them would get to write it down first? Can you imagine? The Prophet ﷺ was taken aback by the scene of just 30 angels coming down to write down the praise of this one man after coming up from ruku' and saying something that we say on a regular basis. Imagine then the scene of Laylatul Qadr, right? The scene of all of these angels coming down, all of the traffic of billions and billions and billions of angels that are coming down to record their ibadah, to record the worship of that night, filling up the space between the heaven and the earth to the point that there is no space in the lanes. And the writing of the decree for the year is coming down. Imagine if you could perceive and see all of that descent on that blessed night. SubhanAllah, it's an awesome thought, an awesome sight, and it is as real as the things that we see right in front of us. And so I want you to think about it from that perspective. If only you could see. And I actually want to build upon that concept with Allah Azza wa Jalla saying, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ. Like, what would cause you to know what Laylatul Qadr is, how amazing Laylatul Qadr is? Because had Allah Azza wa Jal not told us about Laylatul Qadr, then how would we be able to distinguish it from any other night of the year, right? Maybe some of the righteous would perceive something on that night, but the reality is the world would go on not knowing. I mean, just think of those who aren't Muslim and how they proceed on the night of Laylatul Qadr. They don't know. They know that the Muslims over there are fasting Ramadan, right? Some of them know that it's Ramadan right now, but they don't know the difference between Laylatul Qadr and other nights. And so Sufyan ibn Uyayna, rahimahullah ta'ala, says that when Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ, how would you know? That it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ, what would you know had Allah Azza wa Jalla not informed you of it? And what makes this so significant is that usually when Allah Azza wa Jalla uses that language, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ, وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about something of great terror that you are not perceiving, something that should cause you great trepidation and fear because you're not paying attention to it, but it's right in front of you. So, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْقَارِعَةُ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْحَاقَّةُ. When Allah is talking about the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about resurrection, and Allah Azza wa Jalla is talking about these awesome things that should cause great fear and trepidation. But here, when Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ, it's actually about the incredible reward. Like, if only you knew how amazing this night is, if only you could perceive all of the elements of this night. And that brings us to the very name itself. Why is it named Laylatul Qadr? So there are multiple things that the scholars point out, and they're not necessarily in contradiction of one another. In fact, they are complementary to one another. So some of the scholars said that it's called the night of decree, Laylatul Qadr, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees provisions, fates, and all created things in the universe during this night. And then He reveals them to the angels to abide by. So Allah Azza wa Jal calls it the night of decree, Laylatul Qadr. And this is attributed to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, Qatada rahimahullah, and others. Others mentioned that the name Laylatul Qadr speaks to its high esteem, its honor, its position. And so when you say Qadr, the Qadr of something, you're talking about how awesome it is, right? How great it is. And so they say that this is like when you say about a person that this is a person of great Qadr, right? This is a person of great esteem, great position. The third one is that the night is named so because whoever spends the night in worship is granted a greater honor than that which they ever had. And so it kind of builds off of the second meaning. And so their nobility with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most High, is increased. And the fourth opinion is that it is named so because worship, the worship itself during this night, has tremendous value. By the way, Shaykh Yusuf Wahab, hafidahullah ta'ala, wrote a beautiful article on Yaqeen Institute. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll reference it in the comments, which talks about some of these different things. He translates a powerful treatise in this regard. So let's talk about this. Allah Azza wa Jal references it explicitly in two places. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna anzalnahu fi laylatin mubarakah." That verily we have sent it down on a blessed night. And Allah Azza wa Jal says, "Inna anzalnahu fi Laylatul Qadr." Indeed, we have revealed it on the night of Al-Qadr. So what makes it so special? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points it out right away in both verses that what makes this night so special is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the book on that night. And subhanAllah, as you think about all of the meanings of Qadr, all of the meanings of this word, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has the greatest Qadr, sent the angel with the greatest Qadr to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the greatest Qadr, with the book with the greatest Qadr, in the month with the greatest Qadr, and it will have the greatest Qadr in terms of reward on the Day of Judgment. So let me break that down a bit, inshallah ta'ala. Allah Azza wa Jal, وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِ, that they did not give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala His due right. Allah Azza wa Jal has the greatest esteem of anyone, anything. Nothing can be compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah Azza wa Jal sent with the angel with the greatest qadr, and that is Jibreel alayhi salam, the angel with the highest position, the highest esteem, to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who has the greatest qadr of the prophets, the greatest honor and esteem of the prophets. And he sent the book, the Quran, with the greatest qadr. All of the revelations from Allah Azza wa Jal are blessed, but this is the one with the greatest qadr. In the month with the greatest qadr, which is Ramadan, right? This month to the rest of the months of the year is, as Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah said, Yusuf alayhi salam to the rest of his brothers. 1 out of 12, and it forgives through that one all of the 11 as a result. Subhanallah. So it was in the month with the greatest qadr, and it will have the greatest qadr in terms of reward on the Day of Judgment. You know, there is nothing that you will find in the deen that translates to a greater reward with such a short amount of time, with such a small effort, like the worship of Laylatul Qadr. And so it is truly Laylatul Qadr in every way.